Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Ty Hauser. Let's queer up trans rights. Supreme Court upholds ban on trans youth care. In a landmark ruling with far-reaching consequences, the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld Tennessee's law banning gender-affirming care for transgender youth, including puberty blockers and hormone therapy. The 6-3 decision in the United States versus Skrmetti marks the first time the court has ruled on the constitutionality of such bans, and LGBTQ advocates say it's a devastating setback. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts claimed that the law does not violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and therefore doesn't require heightened judicial scrutiny. That reasoning, critics say, opens the door for other states to follow suit. Human Rights Campaign President Kelley Robinson said, quote, "This court chose to allow politicians to interfere in medical decisions that should be made by doctors, patients, and families, a cruel betrayal of the children who needed them to stand up for justice when it matters most," end quote. Justice Sonia Sotomayor issued a scathing dissent, accusing the court of abandoning transgender youth to political whims. Outrage erupted across LGBTQ circles, medical organizations, and religious allies. The American Academy of Pediatrics warned that the ruling will endanger lives. GLAAD's Sarah Kate Ellis called it a chilling step forward, unchecked government overreach. Faith leaders joined in Reverend Paul Rauschenbusch of Interfaith Alliance, who said, quote, "God loves trans youth, and so do so many religious communities and people of diverse faith and belief across our country," end quote. Already 27 states have laws restricting gender-affirming care for minors, and 23 are currently enforcing them. HRC warned families may be forced to uproot just to protect their children's health. While legal experts stress that other trans protections remain intact, the verdict has shaken the community, and the fight, they say, is far from over. So in this, I see a glimmer, and I am not a lawyer, and I certainly couldn't put the argument together, but it sounds like Robert's statement is very nuanced. It's talking about a very specific way of reading one thing. So it's possible that there is another argument out there from a different angle that can take this on. Will that happen? Hard to say.
Yeah, and I think the other problem with this is, we've got this government, right, that always had preached, small government, we're cutting back, but now they're telling people how to raise their children. Mm-hmm. And what I fear is that these very specific things that they're saying can't be done for trans people, they also have other medical implications for people who might not be trans as well. So now you're putting lives at risk. And so when do we go and say, okay, our government doesn't have, they're saying the blood's not on our hands, we're going to let everything up to the states. However, they're allowing for medical procedures or lack of medical procedures that will cause ultimately death and or irreversible harm to people of this country. I understand what you're saying. He was trying to be very specific about it doesn't meet this law, or it doesn't meet this
particular bar.
This bar. But yeah, who's going to stand up and go, okay, well, here's the next argument, and here's the next argument. How many times?
And there are two things I wanted to add and complement what you gentlemen said. You look at historically, you go back to probably at least the 50s and 60s, where sometimes doctors made decisions on altering someone's visible sex, even though they were intersex. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the parents knew, sometimes they didn't. So what the current trend is then they're saying, well, there can't be interference in a case where somebody may be born intersex and, and make adjustments there, because that would certainly throw this all out. And you can imagine if somebody influential had a child who was born intersex, it's something to use as an argument. People have been intersex since the beginning of time, and, they do make up a small population. From what I understand, I believe it's very similar in terms of numbers, like someone having red hair, I've heard, and some other things. And I just also wanted to quickly add that Jazz Jennings, who was part of the reality series, has graduated Harvard, so good for her. I would encourage Jazz Jennings and other folks who are coming of age to step up if they feel they can lead the charge, and be part of the leadership in our LGBTQ communities out there. She must be very bright to have made her accomplishments. I'd encourage her to do what she can, and others that have that power and the spotlight of the media.
Part of what the story was telling us too is that, it will lead to folks going across state lines for care. Same thing with abortion bans, and same thing. Mm-hmm. If we're not providing equal opportunities for medication, or for healthcare treatment, we're setting up our population, we're setting up vulnerable parts of our population for failure. Mm-hmm. We're setting them up to sort of just be erased, which is what they want to do, which Absolutely. Is the goal of this administration, is to erase things that they find, to erase the undesirables.
Well, and also it's making it hard to find that care because, as you said, marginalized communities might not have the resources to be able to travel across state lines or multiple state lines to get the care that they need on a regular basis. I mean, this care is not a once and done situation.
That's right.
This is, unfortunately, this is not like an abortion where it's a once and done. Mm-hmm. It's ongoing care. So to have to go back and forth. So it's going to up. And so then what it's going to do is then they're going to, okay, well, can we move? And if they're fortunate to be able to move, now we're putting burden on these other states because they're going to have to take now the load of all these people to allow to give them care. So it was called the United States for a reason.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's not what we're saying.
Well, that's the big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.